Hello, and welcome to the Introduction to the EEC Background Record Check Program portal, and this is session 3 of our training sessions. My name is Megan Sullivan. I am the Background Record Check Manager at the Department of Early Education and Care, and I am joined with our tech consultant, Michelle Kramer. If you have not joined us before, our goal of these training sessions is to introduce you how to use the program portal and to manage your roster a little bit better in order to be able to stay in compliance with the EC regulations and our policies, and just help you manage your rosters on a day-to-day better schedule with your BRC candidates. As we stated, this is session 3. If you have not joined us in our previous sessions, we do ask that you go and visit our website to our training page where you can see session 1, where we talked about our BRC policies, as well as how to enter a new candidate into our system. On session 2, we talked about managing your dashboard and how we highlight and want you to focus on certain areas of that dashboard. And then we also talked about the submission index page, also referred to as your roster page, and how to manage that appropriately. So please take a glance at that if you have not already visited those sessions. In session today 3, we will be talking about candidates who are already in process in the BRC program portal and what options may be available to you, such as suitability transfers, resubmissions, renewals, and then candidates that may not be able to be entered by your program staff. As we do always, we are going to talk about the EEC Contact Center. It is 617-988-7841 that you can always reach for any point in time to submit a BRC ticket or contact them for any program portal issues or updates that you may need. We are going to log in to the BRC program portal, and I'll have Michelle walk you through that.
Good morning. First of all, I want you to let you know that during our training session, we use a specific training environment. It looks just like the environment that you would log in on a daily basis to manage your, but ours is called training. So during this, you will not be seeing any real data. It's all fake data. So let's go ahead. We believe that you have already logged in previously, but if you have not, you would need to go back to your welcome email from us, which is called the provisioning email. And in that, there is a link so that you can create an account. We do have a multi-factor authentication. I need to have the verification code sent to me. I'll come up here to my email. And sometimes it could take 30 seconds, 2 minutes for it to come in. This one came in right away. The link that they give you here, the code is good for 5 minutes. So if you don't utilize it right away, just a reminder that you can get a new one by clicking send new code. I'm going to go ahead and verify. It says I'm verified, and I'm going to go ahead and continue. As Megan mentioned, in session 2, we discussed the dashboard. So we highly recommend our prior sessions if you have not seen those previously. And we'll be working in the dashboard today. We'll also be working on our new submissions. But Megan, how about if we go through what the icons are over here?
Absolutely. As you can see on the first icon, that is where you land, and that is your dashboard page. And the next submission is your submission index, where we also commonly refer to that as your roster page, where you can manage and move your candidates around depending where they are in the system. Your third icon is the application submission, where you would look up candidates for new submissions or trying to enter them into the system for the first time or see if any candidates are existing. Then we have your BRC support tool icon. This will take you over to our ticketing system that we commonly refer to as ServiceNow. So again, if you have any needs for submitting a ticket to us, you can get there right through the BRC program portal. The next icon, it will bring you right to our website. It is our training icon. Like we have mentioned before, our training videos, they are all located on this page. And so you can easily get over here and update yourself with something you may have missed in one of our training sessions. And then the last one is specifically for you at residential and placement programs, and that is your reports that bring you candidate information from our old BRC manager system. There is a verification process for that, so if you do not have access, you would have to request access, and that could grant up to 24 hours to take. But once you have that, you can certainly click on those links and it will take you directly to your reports for your program.
Great, thanks, Megan. So one of the first things that we're thinking about showing you today is you have a candidate that you're entering in the system, and our system tells you that they're not available. So let me just show you what happens in that circumstance and why. I am simply entering the data for the candidate for whom I have a consent form. Just a reminder, you need to have a consent form that's been signed within the last year so that you can process. I'm going to go ahead and search now. By the way, if you need consent forms, they're right here. You can download them from here. I'm going to go ahead and search for Paul Cruz, and you'll notice that Paul comes up. He's already in our system. Paul has what's called a BRC ID over here. And we scroll to the right and we see that the actions for Paul are such that we're getting a black box with a message that says the candidate is not yet available in the background record check navigator system. Please try again later or ask the candidate to notify you. So this means that the candidate's already in process in Navigator. We only allow one submission in process at a time. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about what to do in this circumstance?
Absolutely. So if you do encounter that message, we do ask that you reach out to the candidate and have them contact EEC directly so we can walk them through what steps they may need to take in order to get a submission to be available for your program. There are certain occasions where a previous entry may be able to be canceled. Otherwise, that previous submission would need to be completed before your program has the availability. So we do ask that you have that candidate reach out to the contact center. And it is very important that you do not try and manipulate data to try and go about getting this candidate in for your program when you see that message. So, changing the date of birth by one number, the social security by number, it is really important as that can cause issues down the road by creating a different BRC ID for the same candidate and then not having accurate information. So we do ask that you be patient and wait for the process to happen and not try and go around the system and create a new entry for this candidate with inaccurate information.
Great. Let's go ahead though and go back to our applicant lookup screen. And we have an individual by the name of Deborah Philbrick, who just recently applied with you, just left your office. She mentioned that she has already been background record checked before. So quite possibly she could be a suitability transfer for us. So I double check all my information to make sure that it's been entered exact, because if anything is wrong, she may not appear. So Deborah, like I mentioned, has a BRC ID. And if we look across here, there is the actions item column, and we can click on that and she is available, it says, for a suitability transfer. I'm going to go ahead and click that. I do want to make note that it is the technical system that decides what type of submission. You don't decide that it's a new or a renewal or a suitability transfer, but the system does tell you what it's chosen. I am logged in as in the umbrella for DK Residential Program 1, 2, and 3. It asks me to choose the primary location where Deborah is going to be working, what role. We'll choose volunteer for her today. And it asks me to confirm her email address. The accurate email address is crucial here. because she's going to receive an email from our system asking her to answer some questions. So she can't proceed through this process without taking action on that email. So make sure that what you've got here is accurate. What pops up here is what we have in our current system, but on your consent form, you could possibly have a different email. She may have changed her email in the recent months or years since her first suitability. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And it just simply brings me back to my roster page. But let me take you over and show you what Deborah is experiencing. So Deborah's email, you can see her name is here in the subject. She gets an email from EEC Background Record Check for a suitability determination transfer. And this is the letter she receives. I'm not going to pause to read all of it, but it says to her, you need to click here. You need to take action. So she goes ahead and clicks, and she gets a survey. She will then answer this survey and click submit. And that will determine if she goes through as a suitability transfer or not. So we wanted to make sure that we showed you that information today. Now, Deborah Philbrick, we can see, is sitting on our applicants tab because she's not currently working for us. She's not a renewal or anything like that that would have her on the all staff. And we can see here that her request has been submitted. She's previously had a fingerprint processed. She's in process. If you want to check on Deborah, you can click here and you can see Deborah hasn't answered the survey yet. So my suggestion to everybody is if you are entering a candidate for whom you see that they have a suitability transfer request, that you might want to ping that candidate via email or telephone. Let them know that you've just entered them and they should have received an email from the EEC Background Record Check unit. If they then go into their email and they answer all of the questions and they are deemed that their suitability is fine to be transferred to you, the Navigator system will immediately transfer. So if it takes you 5 minutes to enter the suitability transfer, and let's say it takes her 2 minutes to answer the questions, within 7 minutes, this person could be available to come to work for you as far as from a background record check perspective. Maybe they have to now come in and sign their W-2s, their 4s and all that, but they are ready to work for you that quickly. But in this case, if somebody is still sitting here, the first thing you want to do is look and see, have they completed the survey? If they have not, and they can't find the survey, they can contact the BRC contact center, which we showed you the phone number for, and they can resend them the survey, and then they can answer it. I do want to show you another candidate. Sorry. If you've never searched before, we cover that in session 1 and 2, but I am going to search here for Laura Tillman. And here's Laura. What I wanted to show you is that Laura is on here as a suitability transfer. I also want to show you that the easiest way to find Laura in all actuality is that she would be right here on our dashboard. Now again, session 2 was when we ran through the dashboard, but if we come into our confirm employment section, there's 11 people for which this umbrella needs to confirm the employment status. Again, some people are green because they're suitable and red because they're not. But if you look down here, you'll see Laura is right here on the list. And so I can simply come over here and say, I am going to hire Laura. Hire Laura, and she's now off of this particular tab, and she's on that all staff tab. So again, if Laura decides to come to work for you and you get all the paperwork done quickly, it could happen the very same day. And Megan, you mentioned that we have a fair number of candidates that are suitability transferred and go to work very quickly. Correct?
Absolutely, we do. And just a reminder that that suitability transfer is available within the 3-year period of a current BRC. So candidates can transfer from one program to another generally within 3 years time frame.
And Megan, we had a question at one point. If a candidate worked in multiple, like they were a music teacher and they went to multiple locations, they could transfer their suitability as many times as they wanted within that time frame. So
Yes, absolutely. Candidates can work at multiple programs at the same time and transfer as many times to multiple programs as they wish as well within that 3-year period.
super. One other thing I wanted to note is that not every candidate answers the survey questions such that we can suitability transfer them. And when that occurs, they show up in this canceled requests section. So again, if you were part of our session 2, we recommend that you come in here as frequently as you have activity. And unless you have all zeros here, you want to be visiting. So in the canceled request section, you'll notice that we have somebody by the name of Paul Andrews, and he's a resubmission, and he's in a saved status. And so his request has not been submitted. So what happened here is that he answered the question such that the suitability transfer would not process. And therefore, the Navigator system automatically creates a resubmission. But it's your responsibility to come in here, click on that tab, find Paul, and then you will click on Paul and you will take Paul through the process of submitting him. Whether it's a new submission or a renewal or a resubmission, you're going through the 4 steps of our wizard here. Now, in this case, we're going to pick what program is Paul going to be working in and his role. Now you can go ahead through this and you might say, yes, that information matches what's on my consent form, or possibly on your consent form that you're holding, he included a middle name and you would add that. Perhaps he included an alias. Oops, I hate typos. And you would check the email address. Perhaps you have a phone number. And scrolling down here, he previously did not have a city of birth. So we're going to add that. And he checked off male on the consent form. And we're going to go ahead and click next. I do want to make note, if for some reason he says, no, I don't want to work for you now, I changed my mind, you can delete his application prior to it being submitted. I'm going to go ahead and click next, and it comes up with tab 2. This is really something that we did in session 1, but we wanted to include it as part of today. Perhaps he moved and he's not at 12 Maple Street anymore. He's at 134 Main Street, still in Huntington Beach, Massachusetts. His residential address, because the check mark was here, has been updated as well. And then for reference today, we're going to go ahead and say, yes, he has lived out of state. Maybe he moved to New Hampshire and he lived there recently. And just a reminder that if you don't have the exact date, simply put the first of the month. If you have just the month and year, and we're going to go ahead and say he lived at we'll put him in California. I said New Hampshire, but I changed my mind. And we'll add that. And you'll notice it's been added up above. Again, one of the things that I always mention to people is please proofread your screens as you move along. It's a lot easier, I think. But if you find out, oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong, it wasn't that, you can delete this and re-enter another one. Or if you have a candidate who now has multiple out-of-state addresses, you just continue to add them until you're done and you click next. The next screen we get to is the identity screen. The forms of ID accepted are listed here if there's any question. And down the bottom, if you have somebody who's under 18, it will talk to you about what type of documents they can bring in to Identigo for their fingerprint. I'm just going to say that we have a driver's license for this person. I do want to note that the navigator demands won't let you go unless you put in a date of expiration that's in the future. It's not required, but we highly suggest that you go ahead and enter the driver's license. It's telling me driver's license. Had I chosen something different up here, it would say update that. It suggests that you go ahead and do that. I have some documents here in my queue that we can use for today. Driver's license. And so now I browsed, I found it, I must hit submit. And you'll notice that on this page, I have the driver's license that this candidate is going to use when they go to Identigo. And Megan, maybe you could share a few words about Identigo's process and if there's something that doesn't match.
Yes, it's very crucial that the photo identification that the candidate is using when going for the fingerprinting appointment matches exactly how you've entered it into our system. So if they have a middle initial or a middle name that's on the license, or two names, two last names, things like that, it needs to be identical to the photo identification that they will be using. Otherwise, most likely that candidate would get turned away. And then we would need to re-enter the candidate in the system appropriately. So we do ask that you look at the consent form and make sure that it does match the photo identification. And again, as Michelle said, it has to be a valid and current identification. It cannot be expired.
We're going to go ahead and click next. And the last screen in the section wizard is the consent. All we're asking for you here is to upload the consent form that you had for the candidate. And we take PDFs and TIFFs and JPEGs, no PowerPoint presentations, and go ahead and submit that. Again, during the background record check process, if there's any questions that come up, the background record check unit, they will try to figure it out, help the candidate. So if they have access to the consent form, they can open up this consent form and they might see that, oh, there's a typo on the person's first name. So the consent form and the information in the navigator doesn't match. So this information is very helpful to our team. I'm going to go ahead and submit the application, Megan, unless you had something to add. Okay. And when I click submit, it says, are you sure? Any errors can delay, etc. And so I did a good job of proofreading along the 4 screens here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so now that is the first type of resubmission that the navigator has. The resubmission that was generated because of a survey answers. And those answers generated the resubmission. And of course, that candidate will now be in process on your dashboard as well as on your roster. The second type of resubmission that we wanted to share with you today, that was Paul, sorry. I do have a little notepad over here telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. Carol Cole. So Carol currently works for you. You can see her, she's on the All Staff tab, and she currently works. But Megan, the circumstances for which a program might initiate a resubmission, can you go ahead and share?
Absolutely. So say this candidate is currently working for your program and you become aware that they have new criminal offenses. Maybe they were arrested over the weekend, or unfortunately there was a 51A investigation that led to a support within your program, and that you would need to submit this candidate or other candidates for your program. You would initiate a resubmission. And so you would go in to this entry. There's other reasons. Maybe this candidate at one point in time worked for your program, but it's been over 180 days that they've had a break in service from an EEC program. So they didn't work at any other programs in that time frame, but they had once worked for you about 6 months ago, and now they're coming back and they want to work for you again. That would be another reason for a resubmission. So Michelle will walk you through how to initiate that resubmission.
So I clicked on the candidate's name to open up their details screen, and here I'm going to click on Edit Personal Information. Once I do that, I'm going to click again on Initiate Resubmission. And when I initiate resubmission, it comes up, I have to confirm that I have a consent form, whether it's the consent form that they signed a few months back, as long as it's within the year, or if it's a brand new consent form that they signed for you today. And then we're going to go ahead and submit. And it says, what's the action? And the action is resubmit. And then it's going to say, is the role still employee? In most cases, it probably is the same role, but you're welcome to change it. And it asks you for what reason you're resubmitting. To Megan's point, maybe you've become aware of a 51A, so you would click on this first reason. Perhaps the candidate left your services and it's been more than 180 days, then you would click that. But then you submit, and this should look very familiar. We just went through this process. I'm not going to do it again, but we would go through the 4-step process, submit this candidate. The one thing I do want to show you on the candidates is that I'm going to go back to Paul Andrews, who we submitted a few minutes ago as that resubmission. And what I wanted to point out is, and the same thing for Carol Cole, but they immediately get a fingerprint letter. So that fingerprint letter generates the minute you hit the submit button. So again, in the as you're trying to get people into your system quickly, or whatever the case might be, but this person gets their fingerprint letter, you can certainly ping them and say, check your email, you just got a fingerprint letter, and they can go ahead and click and follow and book their appointment to go to a local Identigo office. Anything else, Megan, that we wanted to share about resubmissions before we start talking about renewals?
No, I think again, that's it, is and just again, making sure that you pay attention to that canceled request for people that you may have suspected that were a suitability transfer that unbeknownst to you turned into a resubmission. So we do ask you to pay attention to that, but otherwise those are the resubmissions entries.
Great. You will notice again here on the left, which we believe that this is a great spot to spend most of your time when you're in the BRC program portal, because it tells you exactly what you might need to do to maintain your compliance with EEC regulations. But I see that I have 2 people here that are pending a renewal. So I'm going to go ahead and click that link. The reason they're pending renewals is, and the indicator here is a circle, a tan circle with an exclamation point. This means that your candidate is within 120 days of their background record check expiring. So in this particular case, Spencer Flynn, his background record check will expire January 17th. Our suggestion is when you log in, if you see anybody in that renewal bucket, click and go ahead and send Spencer the consent form in hopes that the consent form will come back to you, today, tomorrow, within a short period of time, and you can then go ahead and submit him for renewal. You can see here, Claire, her date is February 15th. So whatever 120 days from today is, those are the people that would be showing up here. So for Spencer Flynn, though, when I looked at this, I'm like, oh, Spencer, actually our favorite employee, but Spencer actually just left our employment. So I don't need to renew him coming up for January 17th, but I am going to end his affiliation because last Friday was his last day of employment. So I would go ahead and end affiliation here. Obviously, if he wasn't up for renewal or anything like that, you could simply search for him, find him, and put his ended employment status in so that he moved to the inactive page. But for Claire, Claire is one of our favorite employees. I went ahead and I sent her the form, the consent form, and I'm going to go ahead and click for her renewal. Now, please note, she did not immediately go into the renewal status. She's in a save status, just like those resubmissions. Now, we would show you her that you need to come back and revisit this. She'll stay on this page until you take action on this saved. However, I think that if you have the consent form and you're going to click to renew, most times you're going to then just dive right in, click on Claire, and go ahead and, oh, surprise, go through the 4-step data entry process, which I'm not going to go through. The steps here are exactly the same as they were for resubmission. And again, maybe Claire worked in DK Residential Program 1, but now actually we're moving her to 2 as her primary location. We can list that here. And then we would click submit. The fingerprint letter that I showed you for the resubmission would generate the same. Claire would get that immediately, and she would be in process for a renewal. I did want to share.
And Michelle, if I could, I just want to mention
Please.
that again, it is critical that you are checking the consent form for any updated information and just not going through the process of what is already within the system. And then again, that maybe the person has a new updated email address, or there was information that was left off, unfortunately, in the previous entry that you now need to enter. For candidates that come up during renewal and have had a name change, it is also, again, critical that because you can't enter this candidate, you can't change their name information. We do ask that you do not create a new entry for this candidate, and that you would have this candidate called the contact center so that we can make that name change edit, and then you would be able to initiate that renewal. So again, we do ask that you don't create a new entry, and that if you were to enter a candidate that is up for renewal that had a name change, say they got married last year, we do ask that you reach out to us so that we can edit that information appropriately, so that they keep that same BRC ID throughout the system of the years in the system, excuse me, the years, and not creating new entries. So again, it's critical that you pay attention to the consent form information when updating a renewal.
Thanks, Megan. On our confirm employment tab, oh, by the way, in process applicants, that's where you will find these people that we've entered while they're in process. Well, before they get their fingerprint, once they are fingerprinted, they're in the in process. And if somebody were to become no longer that you don't want them to be in process, you can end their employment while they're in process for their background record check. But again, I want to come back to my confirm employment tab here. And I want to mention that, for example, we see people here on the applicants tab, and these are people that are ready for us to hire them. However, I also want to call your attention to the confirm employment here under actions needed for staff. So for your renewals, we're going to click here, and you can see that Brittany Blue, who had previously been entered for a renewal, she's now completed and suitable, but the navigator doesn't know what's her employment status. So you go ahead and you click here, and because you are continuing her employment, you've already hired her, you are confirming her employment status is remaining in effect. So you would click confirm employment, and then now you have nobody left on your all staff. So that's entering the renewal, the saved starting the renewal, the saved status, entering the data and making sure that the data does match the most recent consent form. And then once they're completed, going ahead and hiring them. And the navigator, as I mentioned, tells you they're ready for you. You can hire them. In the meantime, while the candidate is in renewal, they can remain on your roster and actively working. Megan, any comment about that piece of it, the remaining working?
Nope, so their previous status would remain. So again, if they were previously found suitable, they would remain in that status during their renewal that's in process. And then, depending upon the outcome of that BRC is what would make the determination if they remain suitable or if there was something different that appeared on their background and unfortunately became not suitable. You would be notified. So again, pay attention to your renewal statuses to make sure that that outcome does remain the same. But a renewal does not go into a provisional status. That there are some questions sometimes that now that they're in a renewal that they go to that provisional status. So if they're already been suitable for your program and you are renewing, they would remain fully suitable until deemed otherwise.
Perfect, thank you. Do want to take you to the next section, which is people that cannot be entered by you. Let me go ahead and enter this gentleman, Daniel Spinney. I'm going to do this a little bit different though. I'm going to use this entry in case you're ever wondered. If you know the BRC ID for the candidate, then you only have to enter 2 fields instead of having to enter their first name, their last name, their date of birth, their social security. You can click on BRC ID, enter that. We do also require the date of birth, but it's only 2 things to enter. Still need to confirm that you have the consent form and you're going to go ahead and search. Now, Daniel, I keep wanting to say Daniel Spinney has a exclamation point with a black circle, which means I cannot take action. Now, earlier today, we showed you when a candidate was already in process, we got this. In this case, though, I'm not allowed to enter Daniel because he was previously found not eligible for employment based on prior information. So therefore, I'm not allowed to enter that. I do want to pause here. While we're doing this training and recording it, we are actually in the process of changing this slightly. So Megan, could you let this folks know that if they end up watching this video after December 2024, this process will have changed.
Absolutely, yes. So thank you. And we did want to just highlight that for you in case you were watching it today. And again, please pay attention to the message that you are seeing, because as you notice here, this is a different message than the candidate that was not available earlier because they were BRC was in process. So there are different messages. So it is critical again that you pay attention to the reason of what the message is stating to you for why the candidate may not be entered. And so, as Michelle stated, for candidates that had been previously found not eligible for employment, this message will no longer appear, and it will allow you to enter that candidate, and it's going to create an ineligible submission type. So as we talked about, submission types, that was your suitability transfer, your resubmission, and your renewals. You will now see a ineligible request type, which basically you will immediately get that in the system, and both you and the candidate will receive a letter from EAC basically indicating that that candidate is not eligible for your program for hiring purposes. And so we are going to be doing away with this message and entering that. I do want to highlight this ineligible request type is very different than the ineligible for provisional approval that you may see on your program roster. That is a suitability type versus a request type. So there is very different meanings for these. So again, the ineligible request type that is coming in the next few months, weeks, that will be an ineligible request type that the candidate will not be able to be employed. However, for candidates in a suitability status of ineligible for provisional approval, basically just means that they can't be hired at this time until they have been deemed fully suitable by EAC, and then you can hire them at that time. So they are different statuses that I wanted to point out. But In the meantime, this is what you will see if a candidate cannot be entered by your program if we have already deemed them not appropriate for employment.
And when the candidate receives the letter telling them that they are ineligible, of course, we invite them to call the contact center here at EEC to discuss if there's a ban in place or what's happening. So they would receive that information via email, as well as Megan said, you too will see a letter within the program portal for the candidate that is addressed to you on behalf of the candidate. One more thing I wanted to show you today is perhaps, whoops. Do I have this candidate? Perhaps you have a candidate that's on your roster, Stephanie, and Stephanie is listed as not suitable. And Stephanie calls you and your discussion, and you decide that you want to resubmit Stephanie. You can click resubmit, and you would go through what we've gone through for the last however many minutes, and you would confirm that you have a consent form, and we go ahead and search. And I just wanted to point out that you will reach that same place. So whether it's somebody who's never worked for you that you're inputting, or it's somebody who's worked for you and they're listed on your roster as not suitable, you're going to get to that same place where you see this message that they're not eligible. And you would want to let them know that, Stephanie, you should make a call to the early education and care group.
And again, just to highlight, this message is a little bit different than you may see for some other not suitable reasons. So if the system does allow you to resubmit a not suitable candidate, maybe they had failed to respond to us for additional information that may have been required, we do allow you to resubmit that candidate on a not suitable submission. So there are different, again, reasons where we may allow you to resubmit a candidate after being not suitable, and then there are times where EEC will not allow that candidate to be resubmitted, and you will get those notifications.
Megan, that concludes what I wanted to share today. So I'll let you close us out.
Absolutely. So again, we appreciate you joining us. Hopefully you've joined us for session 1, 2, and 3. But if not, if you've only joined us for session 3 today, we still appreciate you taking a look at our videos. If you have any questions regarding how your BRC program portal system is working, or if you do need any updates on candidates, you can always reach out to our contact center at 617-988-7841, where we may try and hopefully assist you with your issues. Thank you, and I appreciate you all coming.